Hi, I'm Addison K. Witt, Poet Laureate of the Defense of Democracy and host of this podcast. The attack on America's public school system isn't slowing down, but neither are we. Here you'll meet authors, educators, students, and defenders from across the country who aren't just sounding the alarm, they're answering it. You'll be informed, you'll be moved, and if we've done our job right, you'll be ready to stand with us. This is the Defense of Democracy podcast. Let's get into it. Hello, friends, families, and allies. Welcome to the Defense of Democracy podcast. I'm your host, Addison K. Witt, Poet Laureate of Defense of Democracy. I believe books are more than stories. They're lifelines. They carry voices across generations, across divides, and into the hands of young readers who are still discovering who they are. That's why today's conversation feels especially urgent. My guest is Ashley Pérez, a scholar, novelist, and advocate for readers' rights. She's the author of Out of Darkness, a book both celebrated and censored, and most recently, Band Together, Our Fight for Readers' Rights. She also directs the Unite to Read project at Ohio State University, helping young people and communities defend access to diverse literature. Ashley, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. We've had an opportunity to chat just a little bit. There was a lot of great things we said a moment ago, and so hopefully we get to bring all that into this conversation. Let's begin not with your credentials, but with your story. What first drew you into literature as both a scholar and a novelist?
Yeah. Well, I've always been an avid reader, like a lot of writers. I spent a lot of time in libraries and sort of I have this tremendous respect for the librarians in my very small, very conservative town, in East Texas where I grew up, who were, never batted an eye when this little fourth grader was walking around, lugging big books that I wanted to read. And so I think that's, there's something about having our own rich and weird encounters with different texts that defines a sense of the importance of readers' autonomy. I think I feel really strongly about that for my own children, for my students, my past and present. So I think that those early reading experiences are important, but the most pivotal experience shaping me as a writer, as an educator, and frankly, as a human being, were my experiences teaching high school students in Houston, Texas. This was back in 2004. And I'm often telling this story just to emphasize for my students, when we went to the school library, what was missing. And I taught primarily Black, Latinx, and Asian American students, and the poverty of representation. Even though our media specialist collected everything that she could, the books just weren't there. They didn't exist. And over the past 20 years, writers like me and many others have worked to diversify what's available on the shelves. But I saw my students hungry for representations of lives like theirs, but also for representations that communicated the dignity and belonging of all kinds of people. And I think that's one of the important things to emphasize. It's not just about, seeing yourself. It's about seeing a wide range of representations that uplift the experiences of all kinds of people. And of course, in 2004, young adult literature was heavily dominated by white, cisgender narratives representing middle-class people and heterosexual relationships. And, that needed to change. And authors like me worked to change that. But I also believe really strongly that what we've seen in recent years with attacks on books is very much about attempting to roll back that progress, to erase the diversity that's both real in our society and that has been hard won on the shelves.
Wow, there's so many jewels in what you just expressed that I want to delve into so many. First of all, I'll start with this here. What part of East Texas are you from, or did you grow up in?
In Kilgore, Texas, so it's oil country. People, anybody who has like drill team connections, the Kilgore College Rangerettes were very famous. They're like a high stepping, I don't know, kind of
Oh, I
team.
know them
You know the
well.
Rangerettes? Okay.
I'm from Tyler,
Oh my
Texas,
gosh! So
and so we had
40
the
minutes away.
Apaches at Tyler Junior College, and so yes, I know them well. Just down the road.
Yeah, Tyler, Texas, one of the librarians there made a valiant effort to keep my book from being moved out of the young adult section. I think that they did ultimately remove it, but it's just down the road. So there you go.
Well, there are many things that you said, and I love there was something you said, and I got part of it that it's not just about seeing yourself reflected, but the scope of what is possible when you have access to information, more books, and you're able to expand that imagination and your sense of reality or knowledge of the world.
Yeah, basic recognition. I mean, I think that this is one of the things that I say a lot in terms of like when we think about like why do books that represent all kinds of experiences, including experiences that some people, hope never to have or don't, what I mean? That I write about a lot of painful experiences. I don't want those for anyone, but because they are part of our world, they need attention. And I think that one of the things I talk with my students about a lot is ethical imagination and what the power of not just awareness of other people's experience, but a sense of recognition of what other people may experience in their lives or what people historically have experienced. Out of Darkness is set in the 30s, and I hear from a lot of students about how important seeing those realities. What was the felt sense of racism in 1936 in East Texas, and also the nuances. How did it affect Black Americans? But if you were one of the few Mexican Americans in that community, how did it land on you? And what was the weight of that? And how all of that is not some distant and disconnected um, you know past, but it is something that is braided into our present. And I think that for people to understand the ongoing, the ongoing racialized violence in our society, we have to trace those threads back. Um, you know, to have points of reference and have a sense of recognition for the pain and also for the joy and the beauty, that the way that people create and recreate in their lives in spite of those oppressive circumstances, so that we're part of that project of recreating and creating in our lives, but also holding a space for that possibility for others. And I think anybody who's read Out of Darkness to the End wants more for the characters. They want a different world where those characters get to thrive and share their gifts with the world. And I think that sense, that's something that if we read widely, if we read about a lot of different experiences and a lot of different people, if we read deeply with a desire to understand, we end up understanding that every person's potential is important and that every person they're blossoming their expansion into what's possible for them and for those around them benefits, add something to our world. And so I really believe that that kind of vision and that kind of recognition is transformative for people because it makes them feel safe in a diverse and pluralistic society. And we have a diverse, pluralistic society. Whatever people in the federal government want to say, that's true. It's real. And people can feel at home in that if they learn how to bridge across differences and imagine into different experiences.
Read deeply with a desire to understand is indeed transformative. I love that. That's what I take away from what you just said. That's good stuff. Okay, you are a professor, director, researcher at Ohio State. How does that role inform your writing?
Well, I'm, really excited I love teaching. And I think that I I've been really fortunate to be in a very interdisciplinary department. I'm in the Department of Comparative Studies. My colleagues are, scholars of, religious studies, popular culture and music, folklore, sociology, anthropology. It's a very diverse group of scholars. And I've really seen my work shaped by that very rich conversation that centers culture and the different expressions of culture and the different, the questions that cluster around, what do we create as people and how do we live together? And I will also say, being a professor has been in this time has become interesting because I have had opportunity to bring all of the lessons that I've learned being a heavily targeted author, receiving hate mail and all, and seeing censorship in the K-12 space, um, which began in 2021. We knew it was coming to higher ed. And in Ohio, where I teach, we've seen in the last few years, the state legislature has really put higher education in the crosshairs. And we have last year, the Senate senator made it the number one priority to pass a anti-DEI, restrictive bill to chill important conversations and to create a kind of climate of fear and surveillance in our public universities. And just to be clear, I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of my university today, but that experience is so very connected to what K-12 teachers and librarians have been enduring. And I am now in the position of I'm a university senator. I, serve on a steering committee that's includes the president of the university. I do everything I can to make the case that a core dimension of our academic responsibility is to thoroughly teach the concepts in our field and not to contract or restrict the discussion out of fear of being targeted for teaching controversial topics. Now, that is a heroic effort for people to hold that wide space for their students, but I think it's our responsibility. And my goal in the spaces where I have influence in higher ed is to help people connect the dots and understand that the censorship happening in higher education, the censorship happening in K-12, the censorship happening at ABC, right? In
Yes.
Jimmy Kimmel's sort of removal and then reinstatement. These are not they're all related, and they all need our attention. And they can also, when we see those connections, we can actually respond with a really broad coalition. And I think that's where defense of democracy and the priorities of the organization are really important, because there's this sort of sense of there's a lot we can agree on and we can stand together. And I'm very optimistic. I find that intention with the moment a lot, but I have to hope for people to step into that kind of clarity and stand together. So higher ed is just unfortunately for me, in large part, another front of the fight against censorship and the fight for ideas that matter and the fight for books that matter.
I agree with that, and it seems that right now, with everything going on in society and much of what you just mentioned, that professors, educators, teachers, authors are literally on the front lines right now in our fight for our democracy and unification of our nation. Because, well, some people don't believe that we need a unifier in chief to lead the nation, that it can be any person who has whatever belief systems they have. We are the United States, it's in our very name. And it is important to have people that can unify and lead the nation if we're going to represent democracy full out. There has to be unification. And right now, it's those professors and teachers and educators, universities, institutions of higher learning. They're literally on the front lines right now.
Yep. It's not a lot of fun, but it's sure important. Everything that's wait, no, one thing I highlight as, one of the opportunities of this time is that everything that was important last year, everything that was important 4 years ago, 10 years ago, is that much more important, and I think people can feel it, and so if you can say, "Wow, what I do today in this classroom really matters," then there can be a sense of greater purpose, that is one gift at a time when there's so much being taken away. To feel that it matters makes all the difference, I think, and that I think that's why my teaching in Houston was so influential to me, is that I knew that those relationships with students mattered, that it mattered that I show up with curiosity and I show up to learn with them. And I want that, I want that for my college students too.
Yeah. And that it would have a long-term or long-lasting impact. Let's talk a little bit about your books. Your book, Band Together, Our Fight for Readers' Rights, comes at this very pivotal time. What what message do you hope it conveys most?
Mm. I think about Band Together as this, it's like I think about it as a lifeboat, right? Particularly when I think about libraries like the ones in Tyler, Texas, like the ones in, all over Florida, all over Utah, all over Iowa, that have been systematically stripped of stories that young people need to recognize themselves and recognize others. And when I think about what I want for those students, I want them to have a librarian, or a teacher who makes this book available because this book can rebuild the bridges that have been torn down by those book bans, right? So even if Out of Darkness, Genderqueer, right? All of our books have been removed from that library. If a librarian can put Band Together on the shelf, and there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to, they can help young people find the authors who are missing. They can help them understand what has happened and why. And most importantly, they can help young people know that they have opportunities for action, that there's something to do in response to these losses. So I think that that empowerment piece is extremely important. It's and I think that part of how, I had the just the incredible contributors to this collection, brought so much passion and insight to their writing. And I think in large part because we all care so much about reaching readers. And was an opportunity to rebuild bridges to readers that otherwise wouldn't know that we'd written for them. So I think that idea of understanding the issue, finding the books. I have crammed in more book lists than probably anyone thought possible. Into in between the pieces, we have spot illustrations. I'm like, where can we fit one more banned book so that there's another title that you see and you go seek out?
Yeah.
But it's also a really, it's a multi-genre anthology. It's got fiction, it's got poetry, it's got personal essays, it's got graphic narratives. We have a wonderful comics artists who contributed, and it has profiles of youth activists and what they've done. People where the book bans are happening, like a banned book club in Central Texas, but also people who have access to every book they could ever want, like Christopher Lau in Brooklyn. He lives in the most diverse, 5 square miles of the nation and can access any book. And he created an entire YouTube channel to highlight the books that have been going missing in many libraries because he cares
Wow.
about access for his peers, right? And so that sense of advocacy that goes beyond an individual person's right to read and extends to how do I amplify the importance of access for everyone. And so those are, just those are a few of the things that I am so grateful for and proud of in this anthology.
Love that, and I love that the pendulum is always swinging, and that when there is oppression or someone is trying to prevent others from access, that people still find a way, that, the water still rises, and you start to see the best of others come out as well, and looking for opportunities and ways to be of service and to help and to be purposeful. I love that. You mentioned your other book, which is Out of Darkness, and it has been both celebrated and censored, as we've discussed. When a book is banned or censored, what kind of feelings and thoughts go through your mind? And you can certainly speak to this personally.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say first something about timing, because Out of Darkness was published in 2015, so
Mhm.
it's celebrating its 10th anniversary this
Yeah.
year, and for more than half a decade, it was only celebration. I mean, this book won awards. It was, had starred reviews. It was a best of book. I think Booklist included in it. It's like 50 best YA books of all time. It was really celebrated, and what a gift, to have a book that's challenging. It's a hard book. I often say, when people are like, well, who's this for? I'm like, this is for someone who's on their way to reading Toni Morrison. You know,
Mm.
it's not a beach read, right?
Yeah.
It's we're
Yeah.
going to we're going to stand together and witness pain and witness squandered possibility. To see, what does racism, what does family abuse do to the real potential of young people, and how do we envision and fight for a world where there's room for all kinds of love, all kinds of families. Um, but so I got to have this really nice time of it just being a really special book to a lot of people. And then in 2021, very shortly after the 2020 election, so it's just the very beginning of the year in 2021, the book ban movement really gained steam. And there was a what we would call like this sort of in this new wave of book banning, where the the MO is, don't read the books, get a list, target a bunch all at once, and target people of color, books by and about people of color, queer people. Go after the difference, go after the diversity. So book banners lists and this is still largely the case, although they've become savvy about like, oh, let's get more white writers in there so it's not so noticeable. But the lists of books to target were basically the lists of books that we would give people to bring more representation to their collections. And so there was a kind of weaponization of resources against schools and communities. But that was 2021. So, that challenge was unfolding. Then the district did remove my book and a bunch of others from a choice reading program. It was like, kids could choose from 100 or more books. No one was being forced to read anything. But they made the decision to remove our books. And then there was kind of a domino effect, and also a lot of coordination behind the scenes. The Heritage Foundation,
Mhm.
there were a number of groups that really saw an opportunity with book banning to undermine public schools, to create chaos, to distract from important issues. And school board meetings, especially initially in Central Texas, but it happened all over, they became these like almost like a Jerry Springer type of atmosphere, where the more outrageous, the more flashy
Yeah.
the disruption, the better. And a woman named Cara Bell in Lake Travis, Texas, showed up and presumably commenting about my book, but actually just doing this anal sex rant. Speaking of Jimmy Kimmel, we were talking earlier. Um, Jimmy Kimmel made this video of this mom in Texas ranting in a very unhinged way in a school board meeting. The internet video of the year in 2021, played it a bunch of times, got a lot of laughs. It was internationally viral. And that put Out of Darkness, unfortunately, on every list
Yes.
where this kind of effort was happening. And it was it was laughable in certain media spaces. Look at this outrageous person who's fixating on a passage where the author's representing the kind of uh, harassment and objectification that a young Mexican American woman endures coming to a white school. I'm representing it. I'm not endorsing it,
Right.
but the failure, to just the word cornhole is here. And so this book is about anal sex. Like it's outrageous, but it was effective. In Lake Travis, Texas, police officers came to the school libraries, the middle school and high school libraries where Out of Darkness was, and removed the books. The optics of that are so damaging to, to communities, to people who share identities with the characters. I often tell folks, the part of why they love to target certain books is that in 2021, 2022, at least then, you weren't going to go to a school board meeting and say, I don't want Black kids or Mexican kids in my child's school, but you could hold up this book and say this book is filth, and you broadcast the same message because you're
Hmm.
stigmatizing the identities of those characters and of kids like them. So, it felt terrible. It's very it was, to your work that you've poured your heart into, to be mischaracterized in this awful way, to be it's just like slime. And more significant than the video itself for me was all of the hate mail, because every time that video was reposted, I mean, I got horrible messages sent to my work, on my work phone, voicemail, um every inbox I have, Instagram, Facebook, what is it? LinkedIn. You don't realize how many inboxes you have until they start filling up with hate mail.
Right.
So, that was really awful. But I think one of my strengths as a person, and I'm very grateful to have had some of the hard experiences that I've had that have made this possible for me, is that I I don't want painful experiences, but when I have them, I do everything I can to translate them into some kind of positive action. And so once I started,
Right.
I think that the need to do something in response, not to defend my reputation, but to defend readers, to defend the work that authors do. I think that that was my way to not be simply paralyzed in the face of all of that hate and the cascade of further book bans. So I started writing about book bans. I did tons of interviews. I also did personal things like I would print out all of the hate mail and then collage it with little snarky comments on it. Band Together actually has like it's illustrated. It looks better than my actual notebook, but I have an actual notebook where I would paste in things, where it would say things like, this disgusting filth being on my children's library shelf, makes me sick. I don't think I can eat for the rest of the day. And I'm like, ooh, Moms for Liberty diet plan, um, lose weight with outrage. But I have to be playful. I have to
Yeah.
transform things to not just be crushed. And I think that it's been a process to go from finding those positive actions, to editing Band Together, directing this grant, to steward resources to organizations that are supporting readers' rights, to the most important thing, and this is for every author, is to keep writing. But I was kind of frozen for a while there. I couldn't. It felt so impossible to move creatively, and I'm really proud to be. I finished a novel this summer. I'm going to start revising that with my editor, and that is my best answer to book bans is to write the next novel. But it's been a real process. And so I don't recommend it for anyone, that there's nothing I hate more. Well, there's a lot I hate more actually, but I really dislike it when people say, "Oh, wow, good for you." And I'm like, it's not good for me. It's not good
Yeah.
for readers. People who think being banned is like a badge of honor. It's just, I don't think that's a helpful message. And I understand people are well intentioned when they say that, but I really, what I want is Out of Darkness and other books to just be on the shelves for the kids who want to pick them up and read them. And I believe readers know how to set down a book that's not right for them. And that's what they do.
Well, it sounds like, that the message is turning pain into purpose and
Beautifully
having
put.
a sense of humor
Mhm.
and and being able to sort of alchemize the pain of it all into something that helps you see a bigger picture for yourself. And also, I feel that in listening to you, that you're galvanized to do even more for not only yourself, but for your readers and for the community at large, where you have to keep going and keep writing because this is this inflection moment right now. And you can either take the pain and stop, and sometimes we have to for a brief moment, but then we're able to reconnect, especially if you happen to have a strong supportive community where you can people believe in you and can help you believe in yourself even when you've been hard hit
Yep.
by
And that
criticism.
that is so important. And I think that my partner, my kids, that they see the cost, they see the toll, and also they see why it's important to keep
Yeah.
advocating. And that's if it, that I think when one of the things that in this time motivates me the most across these different areas of advocacy is I want my kids to see that we don't sacrifice ourselves. We have to work in ways that are sustainable, but I want them to see that every opportunity I have the capacity to take, that it allows me to do something that supports other people and their ability to live free and full lives. I'm gonna do it. And I think that, you know, there's a way that sometimes family members, they worry, right? They worry about
Sure.
safety or other things, but I think that we're in a moment where we all need to be supporting each other to see that we always have choices, even as things get feeling cramped in places where there's a lot of repressive activity. Is we still have choices and ways that we can make make the space bigger for each other.
Yes. Okay. So I think we can all agree that reading is fundamental, not just as a skill, but as a way of seeing the world, of imagining possibilities, of connecting to one another. Let's talk a little bit more about your Unite to Read project. What impact are you seeing in schools and communities?
Yeah. So this project, really works to build, it's to strengthen the network of advocacy for readers and their rights. And it's a higher education grant. So a lot of our work is actually focused on involving students and professors and researchers in the work that is already happening across our organization. So there's some of this is like really practical, like how can we design processes and a workflow so that community members, once trained, can help defend the books? So, Unite Against Book Bans, which is an ALA affiliated resource page, has something called book resumes. And they are these real simple documents that have a book, the cover, the synopsis, the awards that a book won, some excerpts from reviews. It's a tool to highlight the literary merits of a targeted book. Well, when we have thousands and thousands of books being targeted, we need a lot of help. The Office of Intellectual Freedom at ALA needs help creating these book resumes. So some of our work is really practical, like teaching people how to make a book resume and coordinating that work so we can use our collective capacity to create advocacy tools that people all over the country can use. Because I will say, let me have a little, put my professor hat on for just a moment. Something a lot of people don't realize, and the kind of messy, Jerry Springer energy of a school board meeting where people are talking about pornography and obscenity, is that there's a legal definition of obscenity. And it's, their states by and large have the same definition in their statutes. And a book, it's called the Miller test. This is a part of the Miller test. If a material has serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, when taken as a whole, it cannot be defined as obscene. It could still have sexually explicit content. It might include a
Sure.
rape scene. It might be a manual about sexual health that depicts the sexual organs of the body. That is not an obscene material. And that is a distinction that the book banners have worked to erase, to confuse, to create a lot of chaos around. But knowing that is really empowering. And that's where the book resumes document the serious merits of a book and help to provide a principled defense of the books. So that's one thing. But there's a lot of other, one other kind of area of programming that I'll highlight is that we want to create spaces for authors to talk about their craft, to have a chance to speak about their
So
work.
important.
Yeah, and because once you're super banned, as my now 10-year-old said when he was 7, "Wow, mom, you're super banned." When you're super banned, what you get asked to talk about is book banning, not your books, not your art.
Right.
And so we're working to create, I'm really excited about a partnership with Project Narrative at Ohio State for literary scholars to have conversations with banned authors about their practices and the narrative choices that they made, rather than focusing the conversation on this book's been banned in so many places. So those are some of the things that we're up to, and we have great partners working all over the country. Of course, we've partnered with Defense of Democracy, Every Library, the Highlights Foundation, Brooklyn Public Library, Salt Lake City Public Library. We Need Diverse Books, Daylo. If anybody's seen the Band Together documentary, this group of young people in South Carolina, uh,
Love that documentary
isn't
so
it
much.
great? It
Oh my
hit
gosh.
every point. If anyone's like, "Give me a crash course in 2 hours," I'm just like, "Watch Band Together." I think it's
Yes.
on, you can stream it online now, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it won the grand award in our film festival, the Defense of Democracy Film Festival this year, which I chaired. And it was, oh my God, from the very beginning, the first night I sat down to watch it, I was so moved and really inspired by it. And I think it was part of what inspired me throughout the entire festival, and to find other truths and other bodies of work that were highlighting the importance of uh, books and placing attention on reading and what's happening in our society at large, and what's happening by a few people that want to ban books for the many.
Yep. Yep.
So it was really
Yeah.
incredible.
It is a wonderful movie. Great film.
Well, normally I take this moment here to recognize the incredible volunteers who make up the body of Defense of Democracy. Today, I want to highlight the importance of reading, Read Out across America, a national celebration of the freedom to read, bringing together communities, authors, educators, and everyday citizens to stand up against censorship. It's not just about books, it's about voices, ideas, and the power of imagination. I don't think that we can say enough if about the volunteers. And if you're listening, I invite you to become a host. Share your favorite book online, or simply show up at your local library and be present for the fight to keep shelves full and stories accessible. Okay, the bottom line is that Defense of Democracy just simply can't do it without you. So join us, add your voice, and let's keep this fight going. Um, every student, every person, every community, every one of you matter. Okay. So we know that many listeners feel overwhelmed by the scale of censorship. It's what we're talking about. We were talking earlier about shifting focus. Rather than creating more to-do lists, let's talk about practical actions that we can take in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. I think, and as you were talking about volunteers and things, I've one of the things, especially in this work with the grant, that I've tried to center over and over again is um, connecting to values, right, first, and advocating from a place of what your values are and also what your strengths are, what your passions
Mhm.
are, because there are always ways to advocate that align with the things that enliven you, that make you feel more fully yourself. And so one thing that I want to say to volunteers is, if you have that feeling that you're just doing because you have to do, um, make an adjustment. Stop for a second and take stock, because that's how people burn out, is when they
Yes.
feel I have to, all the issues are so important. All the issues are so important. And there's a way to advocate that you can sustain over time and not just be, it's like, if advocacy is feeling depleting, it's a great time to stop and think about how can it be something that's joyful and replenishing. So sometimes that's people realizing that they need to be doing things in community. If they can sit together and do, create materials or make calls, but when they do it on their own, it feels discouraging. Or sometimes it's about like having an artistic outlet, finding ways to use the gifts that you have. So I just wanted to say that. But when it comes to anyone sort of saying, okay, what can I do here? The first thing we need folks to do is put down their phones and read, right? And you will feel better. I've been working on this with my students. No one should feel bad about their relationship to their phone, because those screens were designed to reel you in and keep you in a loop of checking, 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 and to drop you down rabbit holes. We can resist what's happening and the kind of repressive um, movement in our country, in part by taking responsibility for our attention and being stewards of our attention. And I'm not saying don't be informed, but make a decision about when you want to dip in and like check on the issues, use sources that you trust, but also make a decision about when you're present to something that gives you new perspectives or that makes you remember why this work is important. So I've been asking folks, check out banned books. Just start by checking them out from the library. Don't put pressure on yourself to read 50 pages a day or anything. Check them out, put them somewhere where you see them. Then make it a goal to pick one up and hold it. And then start carrying it around. Read it in places where people will see you reading it and you can start a conversation. I know that sounds really small, but it's a great way to connect and to make the books visible in the world. If we're all carrying a frequently banned book and read, I mean, there are so many banned books, you could never read them all. So there's something for everyone. But we create an opportunity for others to see and learn about the books that young people need access to, that we all need access to. And last thing is, when you talk about banned books, as you're building this relationship, starting with the book you read for your read out session, when you talk about them, focus on what they offer. What beauty did you encounter? What humor? What excited you or challenged you in the reading? How are you different because you read that book? Rather than focusing on the outrage that it's been banned. So we can, we not to say we have to acknowledge that, we have to name that, but let's put the focus on the power of the books.
I am so thrilled that you are in this fight and that you have expressed so articulately where we are and why this is important, and helping us understand how to shift the focus and how to apply very straightforward simple actions that we can take collectively that make a difference. What does freedom to read mean to you as we wrap up?
Hmm. You know, I think I think freedom to read is about when I think about what does it take for people to be free to read. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, there's like the surface level answer and then there's the deep answer. But in the most immediate sense, people have to have both opportunity and access to a wide range of materials. To be free to choose, the choices have to be there, right? Whenever if we're only presented with one option, that's not a choice. And so we need to create spaces of choice for readers. And that is in our school libraries, that's in our public libraries, that's in our classrooms. Uh, the another layer of that though is the way that opportunity to uh to open a book is unevenly distributed. Some of us have to work more hours or receive less pay, those kinds of things. And so, you know, being mindful too about how these issues intersect with the what's really an attack on working people at the federal level, right? And thinking about how are we working to fill in the gaps that are, you know, are already sort of strained safety nets have just been ripped wide open. So what do we do, and how do we support folks so that they can have lives in which they have time and opportunity to open a book?
Wow, so good. And you see these books behind me. I have rededicated myself to going through and reading. I've read a lot of them, but reading a lot more, and it's fun. And this is such a great time. And for those that are interested in reading, pick up a book. Go to your support your local library, your local bookstores. It really will make a difference for them and also for you. Uh,
May I make one
yeah,
last
go ahead.
suggestion?
Please
Sorry.
do. Absolutely.
No, I was gonna say, for adults out there who have not read many graphic novels, I highly recommend this. I think that, I in my banned books class, we're doing a class on censoring history. And there's all kinds of wonderful books that have been adapted in graphic novel form, and they're complex. It's not like this is kiddie stuff. It's not like it's dumbed down. It's made more accessible, and the visual component allows you to really stay with those big ideas more. So, Stamped from the Beginning, there's a graphic novel adaptation. Lies My Teacher Told Me, On Tyranny, I love that book by Timothy Snyder. There's a beautiful illustrated edition. Anyone who wants to think of more ways to stand in their values in this moment should read On Tyranny. There are great books about Japanese internment. The Diary of Anne Frank graphic novel adaptation's been targeted. So there are just these really beautiful books that can give us access to the kinds of ideas and conversations that are being squeezed out of a lot of public spaces. So, especially if you're sort of like rebuilding a reading practice, grab a graphic novel, because that sense of the space on the page is really inviting. And I read them all the time. I love them.
Those are great suggestions. I love that, and having you here today, I just want to say thank you for joining me in this conversation and your ongoing work as a scholar, novelist, and advocate for readers' rights. And you do remind us that books are more than stories. They are lifelines, mirrors, and windows into possibilities. For our listeners, Read Out Across America runs October 5th through 11th. You can take part by hosting or joining a local readout, sharing your favorite banned book online, or supporting organizations like Authors Against Book Bans and Defense of Democracy. We'll include links in the show notes so you can learn more and get involved. Ashley, it has been indeed an honor to have you with us today. Thank you for taking the time. It has meant a great deal, and you're super fun to talk to.
I loved it. Thank you all. And thanks for listening, everyone. Take good care.
Defense of Democracy is the only national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting our schools and libraries from attacks by anti-government extremist organizations like Moms for Liberty. We count on listeners like you to support our work. If you would like to make a tax-deductible donation to Defense of Democracy, please visit defenseofdemocracy.org and click support. 100% of your contribution helps our work, including the production of this podcast. If you are a business and would like to learn about corporate sponsorships of the podcast, which start at $250 per month, please contact info@defenseofdemocracy.org.